Okay, hello. So in this tutorial, um, I want to provide an introductory example for how you can um, tie classes together to form a relationship. Um, and in this example, and also to beside not just a relationship, but also but further like a um, an effective collaboration between the classes to achieve a certain goal or a general programming task that would be um, I guess practical for the use of objects in different classes in such a relationship. In so in the relationship I want to build with a few classes, actually three, um, I want to basically create a programming simulation of um, of shopping, right? Um, so as you see here, I have this is just I guess you could just an undeveloped skeleton of a class I have called a food item. This is just one of the classes that in the relationship that I previously mentioned and briefly um, um, talked about. And it'll be one of the classes that will help us achieve that programming simulation that I'd also mentioned previously. Um, so this class it will be pretty basic. I'll get started on it. It will just have a few attributions or or um, or variables. So we'll first have a name for the food item, which is of course very practical, um, and we'll then create a a constructor um, using um, we'll then create a constructor around that will take in consideration this variable and will initialize a variable um, based upon a value passed in, right? An argument passed in to the into the sole parameter in this constructor when an object is being constructed, right? Um, in that scenario, the constructor would have to be in use, and thus we'd want to provide a value for one piece of data contained by objects of this class I'm now building. So we'll just do name equals n, and that will then give this set the variable name to n. Okay, so um, also we can include a default constructor without that is or not a default constructor sense. The default constructor is a constructor that's automatically tied with tied to a class. It's the constructor that automatically comes with a class as soon as we constructed it. So before I'd written any code here inside, before I'd began any of this definition, before I began writing it, this class already um, had a constructor, right? Um, that wasn't explicitly stated in code, right? So it wasn't basically visible to the eyes per se from just you couldn't it's really it wasn't visibly included in a definition, I'll say, but it's actually it's basically automatic, right? It's automatically um, it's automatically um, given to a class um, as soon as it's created in its crude original form, right? If arguments, and as soon as it's declared, um, it will be assigned a constructor as one in a form similar to to that of this constructor here that I've highlighted. One that lacks the constructor. So from that sense, is basically sort of it's very ineffective as alone. Um, um, or it's very crude and basic. But the one benefit of having that construct, well, but it's not entirely pointless having a default constructor, because if it's not entirely pointless having a default constructor, because a constructor is needed to initialize or declare an object, right? So it's imperative that a constructor exists, and that's really the point behind the automatic assignment of a default constructor to um, to a class, right? So that this so that so that this so that in the in the case that in the case that an object of a class is created, even is created, which is very logical, right? Because if we create a class, the whole point of creating a class is so that we can actually create objects of the type of that class, and and that's really the whole point, right? Because the class lays out a blueprint from which we can derive objects, right? Similar to if we have a blueprint from a building, we could refer to that blueprint and collaborate with it and work with it for the purposes of actually actualizing, I guess you could say, actualizing or creating an actual building. So um, so basically, there is I kind of rambled there, but really the point of having the reason why an object a class is automatically given a constructor is because a constructor is needed for is needed for is needed in order for the creation of an object of such a type of such a class type from that class as a member of that class to be created and constructed. Hence the name constructor applied to constructors that we see here in the Java language. So um, so um, but the reason why here, and so you may be asking, and this is why I purposely brought up the this is why I purposely brought up the topic of why a constructor is, or why it's logical and practical for a or not entirely pointless for a default constructor to be automatically, or for a class to be automatically supplied with a default constructor at its basic crude declaration. Okay, so the reason why I brought up that purpose was so that it would raise questions as to why I'm then including, why I am including a constructor here in this class that lacks any arguments, and the reason why I did actually go about including this such a constructor, even though I already have even though I already have included a constructor within my within this class's definition, is because it's not always practical to assume that the number of parameters um, that the number of parameters um, a constructor has with it is a number of parameters that will that will be the only number of the number that will only be the number. Okay, so basically, it's bad to it will be I would say unpolitic of, or it would be bad of myself to assume that the number of parameters that that this function has here